Okay, David. Well, thank you very much to David Swanson and all the other people that are putting this together, and to World Beyond War and the International Peace Bureau for this remarkable 24-hour vision of peace throughout the world. And Dave Molinex and I are here in the occupied sovereign nation of Hawaii. Um, we are very concerned, as you have seen through many of the presentations today, about peace in the world and what war is doing to that peace, and particularly the Russia-Ukraine wars and the Israeli war on Gaza, the genocide of Gaza. We really appreciate the fact that many of the presentations have gone into the protests that have been going on in their regions about the genocide in Gaza in particular. And those same types of protests have been going on here in Hawaii and throughout the Pacific. So first would like to have Dave Molinex introduce him. Well, first, before, my name's Ann Wright. I'm a member of Hawaii Peace and Justice and Veterans for Peace. And now to Dave Molinex.
Aloha, I'm Dave Mullenix. I've been a peace activist since the Vietnam War, and it's been a long journey. We keep thinking maybe next year we'll have peace. So I just appreciate Ann Wright and Dave Swanson so much for all your efforts for peace and to be involved in this program. Thank you so much. Take it over, Ann.
Okay. Well, what we intend to do in this next 2-hour period is to give to the world a rundown of what is happening here in the Pacific and over to the Western Pacific in particular, the threats that we have that are coming on peace by actions, military actions that are going on in our region. So I will talk, well, during the course of the two hours, we'll be talking about things particularly here in Hawaii and in Guam and other island nations here in the Pacific. David, if I could do a screen share, please. And let's see.
You can, Ann, can you not?
Yep, I can. It's right there. Thank you very much. Okay.
If you want me to do it, just ask, but you can do it.
Okay, I think I've got it here. We'll need your help on the rest of the things, but I think I can do this one. So we again are very pleased to be a part of the third annual 24-hour Peace Wave. And what we will do is to show you where we're covering from Hawaii all the way out to the Western Pacific. And this is a part of the Indo-Pacific U.S. Military Command. And it is the largest U.S. military command of the Unified Command structure that the United States has. It covers all the Western, from San Diego, from the west coast of California on, all the way over to India. It has a huge number of military bases, U.S. military bases in Japan, South Korea, on Guam, now nine in the Philippines, 9 U.S. bases in the Philippines, bases in Australia, using New Zealand very frequently for military exercises, and all the way out to Diego Garcia, British colony. It also includes exercises up in Alaska. How many people are involved in the U.S. military out in this region? Well, 375,000 persons are involved, military and civilian. The U.S. Pacific Fleet has 200 ships, including in and out 5 aircraft carrier strike groups, 1,100 aircraft, 130,000 sailors and civilians. And you're going to be hearing more about the Pacific Fleet after my presentation when Dave starts talking about the largest naval war practice in the world, which is called RIMPAC. Other U.S. military groups are the U.S. Marines that have 2 expeditionary forces and about 86,000 personnel, many of them on the island of Okinawa, and now on Guam. And they have 640 aircraft assigned. The Pacific Air Forces, 46,000 airmen and civilians, 420 aircraft. The U.S. Army has 106,000 personnel, 1 corps and 2 divisions. It also has aircraft and watercraft, and there are 1,200 special operations personnel. So it's just not military. There are civilians, Department of Defense civilians that are a part of this, 38,000 of them. So a total of 375,000 U.S. military and civilians are involved in this region of the world. And they're not sitting down doing nothing. We'll just say that. They are busy with military exercises or war practices. This place is awash in alliances, and the latest alliance is one that you probably heard of this last week. It's an alliance between Russia and North Korea. It's kind of it's the first alliance that I've heard of between those two, but the United States has had alliances forever with South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand. Those are mutual defense treaties. Then you've heard of a recent meeting between the US, South Korea, and Japan. Those 3 are working together on specific things. Then the AUKUS, the Australia, UK, and US, and this is a lot having to do with nuclear submarines that are going to be now purchased by Australia, and a lot of Australian activists are really up in arms about this. Something we should be up in arms about too is that on Taiwan, the United States has now a congressional authorization for $8 billion that'll be going to Taiwan. And that's part of the Taiwan Relations Act, even though the United States does not diplomatically recognize the island of Taiwan. And this came about during the Nixon administration. But the Taiwan Relations Act says that Washington is legally responsible to provide the island with defensive weaponry. And that defensive weaponry right now is really, it's on steroids. The sale of $360 million worth of small drones that the commander of the Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Paparo, now says, I want to turn the Taiwan Strait into an unmanned hellscape using this number of classified capabilities, which are unmanned aerial and naval vehicles, these small drones and unmanned water vehicles, boats that will supposedly give the United States 30 days in order to mount its defense of Taiwan should the country of China actually invade that place, which to me is something I do not believe will happen, is part of the game plan for China. But it is certainly a type of threat that the U.S. military and politicians use in order to sell much more weaponry around the world. And speaking of how the increase in the U.S. focus on the Pacific, if we just take, for example, 4 of the smallest little islands that are out in the Western Pacific, they're all tied in some way to the United States. Guam is a territory. The Northern Marianas is a commonwealth of the United States, but Palau, Micronesia, and the Marshall Islands are independent countries, but yet are a part of the Compact of Free Association, which gives the United States the defense rights to all of the area around them. In this graphic, it shows how much money the U.S. is now spending in these small little islands. And if you look at the verbiage that goes along with it, on the island of Guam alone, there are 71 military construction projects. Over $4 billion is going to be spent in the next year, with $11 billion over the next 5 years. the newest marine base in the world, the first one that has been built in the last 50 years is now on Guam. If you look at Hawaii, just in 1 year, we'll be getting $1.5 billion, and it's primarily for submarine dock space in Pearl Harbor. The Federated States of Micronesia will have 3 military construction projects of $432 million. And I've served 2 years of my life as a U.S. diplomat out in the Federated States of Micronesia. And I can tell you that 432 million is a heck of a lot of money going out to the Federated States of Micronesia. The Northern Marianas will have 7 military construction projects of $388 million. Wake Island, $180 million. All of this for the focus of the United States into the Pacific. Huge amounts of money. On Palau, one project, $121 million. And then the Marshall Islands, which is the place where the U.S. Exploded, I think it was 72 nuclear explosions back in the 50s and 60s in the Marshall Islands, which people in the Marshall Islands are still showing the effects of the radiation from those nuclear or atomic bombs. The Marshall Islands is the home for the Kwajalein Missile Defense Range, which is the far end of the missile systems that go from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California and fly all the way, 3/4 of the way across the Pacific and land near Kwajalein in the Missile Defense Range. So all of these things are part of the huge buildup the U.S. has in the Western Pacific. And then if you go into the types of military exercises that are going on, just focusing on naval ones, because that's really what's coming up for us in the next month. Here's a picture of U.S. Philippine warships trained in the South China Sea. The U.S. is doing freedom of navigation movements of U.S. military vessels very close to mainland China as what they call freedom of navigation. The Chinese have developed military bases on several of the small islands in the South China Sea. So this whole area is just awash with military, the potential for military mishaps with every movement of all of these vessels. And just one type of other exercise, the land exercises, this one with Indonesia, with 2,100 U.S. Military in 1,900. Also in Australia, every other year, when the rim of the Pacific naval exercises are not going on, then down in Australia is a land exercise, land military exercises. And it's just not the U.S. that's out there, and it's just not the Chinese that have their vessels that are going back and forth through the South China Sea. The Russian Navy is now involved in this, and in fact, they have a major military, a naval exercise, a naval war practice that's going on right now, June 18th through the 28th. They have 40 ships and small craft. They have 20 aircraft that'll be a part of this, and Marine units. So it is a very dangerous place in this Western Pacific. So that kind of gives you a rundown of what we are facing out in this part of the world. And I will just, let's see, I'll go to the next thing. Dave is going to be talking about the rim of the Pacific and the big military exercises. Dave, would you like for me to leave this up on the screen so that people can get a view of what it is?
Yeah, temporarily. I'll just talk a little about it, and then we have 3 videos that we'll have to take it down then. So
yes, okay.
Okay, thank you, Ann. I'm going to talk a little about RIMPAC. Approximately 29 nations, 40 surface ships, 3 submarines, 14 national land forces, and over 150 aircraft and more than 25,000 personnel will participate in the biennial Rim of the Pacific, which is called RIMPAC. Exercise scheduled for June 27 to August 2nd 2024 in and around the Hawaii Islands. RIMPAC 2024 is a 29th exercise in a series that began in 1971. As the world's largest international maritime exercise, RIMPAC combines forces capabilities in a dynamic maritime environment to demonstrate enduring interoperability across the full spectrum of military operations. This year's exercises include countries from Australia, Belgium, Brazil, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Denmark, Ecuador, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Israel, Italy, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Peru, the Republic of Korea, the Republic of the Philippines, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Tonga, the United Kingdom, and the United States. This also includes 7 countries from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is kind of far from the Atlantic, but they're still here, and they're coming to the Pacific. This is Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom, and Israel. And 4 NATO partners in the Pacific Rim, Japan, North Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. So to give you kind of a flavor of what this is all about, David's going to show, you can take down that screen now.
Okay.
Going to show you, we have 3 videos. One is an excellent synopsis about what RIMPAC is about. And then we have a promotional video, it's kind of like a video game to get those young men interested in participating. And then our third one has a land assault on Hawaii beaches. So if Dave would like to show those 3 videos, that would be great.
I'm going to do my very best. The first one is on Instagram. I have no notion whatsoever how to make it larger than tiny, but I will show it. Let's see.
The audio is really good, so that might be enough.
Okay, great. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah.
And it has no audio.
We already know Empire is horrible at design and horrible at naming things. RIMPAC means Rim of the Pacific. This is a Pacific Ocean. Technically, this whole thing is the rim, but Empire has been focused largely on this area. Empire has always seen that area as strategic to colonialism, control, and militarism. So back to RIMPAC. It is the world's largest international maritime exercise held around, where do you think? Hawaii. It happens every other year and is hosted by none other than the U.S. Empire's Navy. It is literally a military party for oppressors around the world. It's like the worst spring break in the world and the worst people at it. And they're showing off their weapons and military capacity. And by showing off, that means they're not just like look and see, they're actually firing and using ammunitions and weapons. And also as an opportunity to expand their reach of their militarism. And it is a maritime exercise, but that just means that it's in the ocean, around the ocean, because there are submarines, ships, as well as aircraft and land forces involved in this exercise. This year, it's being held between June 26th and August 2nd, and over 29 countries are participating. I'm showing you this map, which is countries that recognize Palestine. It's a great map. We love the green over here. But I wanted to hone in on the Pacific Rim so that you could look at some of the areas that don't acknowledge and don't recognize Palestine. Got it? Have all of that in your mind? Now, this map is all of the countries participating in RIMPAC, in this global show-off fest of militarism. Notice anything? There's a reason why there is so much overlap between the countries that don't recognize Palestine and those that are participating in RIMPAC. And note, the settler colonizers, Israel and the United States Empire, will be testing weapons to use directly in Palestine. So Empire and its puppet governments are participating in this global weapons testing event, which causes catastrophic climate and environmental damage to land and people in the area. Wherever there is more military, there is more violence, particularly to the people of those areas, particularly to women and queer and trans folks. And it is no accident at all that trafficking always sees increases during these types of exercises. So Empire is holding this global military event in one of its colonies, occupied Hawaii, to test weapons that they will be using against everyone else in the world. All RIMPAC is a glorification of violence and oppression. That's all it is. Especially if you are in any of these green areas participating in RIMPAC, look, there's half of my country, Korea there. We should be demanding that these countries withdraw from RIMPAC. Here's a link to a letter that you can sign on to. And make sure you join in the protests against RIMPAC around the world. If you don't already know about RIMPAC, you should. And yes, it's a horrible name. Everything
Worked out good.
Okay, so you want the next one, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's give it a try.
This is a promotional video on how wonderful RIMPAC is.
Okay, share screen. We're having trouble finding that site. It doesn't look very encouraging. Not having a lot of luck showing that second video, I'm sorry to say. What about the next?
Well, we
Okay.
can put the link in the chat and people can maybe the Navy has taken it down. We could hope for that. It's a 1 minute short video which shows a lot of the ships that are being used in RIMPAC. So it is a promotional video, but we thought it would be interesting for you all to see it. But we'll put the link in the chat.
If I can share screen, maybe I can play it. Let's see if I can play it. Where is it?
I've got the next one ready when you want it.
Okay, can you see that?
Oh yeah, we can.
Does it have audio?
It does. It's just music, but it's mostly just looking at all of this different kind of weaponry that is there. And this is the 1 minute promo video for the military. But it does give you an idea of the types of things that they do with RIMPAC. To include blowing missiles and torpedoes at ships and sinking them. That's called Sink X. And there will be at least one ship that supposedly has been cleaned, so there are no petroleum products in it. And then it will be sunk as a part of this exercise.
So, isn't that fun, kids? You could participate in this wonderful thing. Now I have to figure out how to bring this back down again.
And then just stop share.
Yeah, I'm trying to, oh, here it is.
Mhm.
Stop.
So you want the next one?
Yeah, so Dave can just close this. we'd be
Maybe
in
if I
great
start
shape.
sharing screen, it'll stop you sharing screen.
Well, let's hope you know what you're doing because apparently I'm.
Oh, that'd be going a little too far, but how's this?
Yes, perfect. You did it.
Most people don't realize that there is a land component to the rim of the Pacific, which is a naval exercise, but it is amphibious landings that take place on beaches that during parts of the year have endangered turtles nesting there and other wildlife. Of course, the dolphins, the whales, and things like that that live around the Hawaiian Islands are under stress from all of these military war maneuvers. And 15,000 ground forces are a part of this Rim of the Pacific military exercise.
I think the last time U.S. military had to land on beaches in the Pacific was 75 years ago. So it's kind of a futile exercise in general. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They continue to spend a lot of money to fight the last war. I believe the U.S. military has enough weaponry to fight 2 World War IIs at the same time, one in the Pacific and one in the Atlantic. And we're not at war officially. I live here in Kaneohe, and the Marines aircraft will fly over. It's really loud. And it's kind of frightening sometimes. They're flying right over the house. I don't really need to have those kinds of things flying over my house so loudly. So, these are beautiful Hawaii being invaded.
and the practice of invading and going through urban areas or buildings is a part of their practice too. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. And so what are we doing here in Hawaii about all of that? Well, we are having a variety of protests, which have been going on for each one of the rim of the Pacifics. Just this last week, we had a big press conference with about 20 organizations that provided speakers to explain why we, the citizens of Hawaii, are very concerned about this. And David, if you could go ahead and show the first one, which is at minute 23, Healani Sonoda Pali will be speaking. And let's see, she's been working hard on the Red Hill, and trying to get jet fuel out of our water. But she does a good presentation on the challenges of RIMPAC.
Let me know if this is the right one.
And if you can move it to minute 23.
Sorry?
If you can move it to minute 23.
Minute 23.
Minute 23:35. Yep, that's good. And this is Healani Sonoda Pali.
Pali, I am the spokesperson for Kalahui, Hawaii. I'm Kanaka Maoli, and I can trace my genealogy to Papa, Mother Earth, and Wakia Sky Father, from whom all Kanaka Maoli are descended. We are here to stand against RIMPAC, the Rim of the Pacific, the world's largest international maritime exercise that takes place on our Aina and in our Moana, where colonizing nations play war games in order to bring death and destruction to other indigenous peoples around the world. The violence, death, and exploitation is nothing new to my people. The life-giving bodies of women have always been on the front line of these destructive interactions and the most vulnerable. From 1778, when Captain Cook first stepped foot on our shores, we have been bombarded with mass death, disease, violence, exploitation. Women at that moment were on the front line of contact, quote unquote, with not just the Western world, but with capitalism as the goods that was traded. In 1893, the US landed troops without cause or provocation on our shores, threatening violence, so that a small group of Haole businessmen could overthrow our peaceful nation and our beloved Queen colony. It's been 250 years. The violence that comes with militarization and commodification of our Oceania is nothing new to us, to Kanaka Maoli. And it continues to this day with RIMPAC, which is set to begin this month. With the military regatta participants and the nations that are coming, 29 of them, come an increase in crime and sexual exploitation of women and children. Women's bodies are the sites of reproduction, and like the land, like the Aina, they are at risk. Military presence and occupation is a threat to our ability to sustain life here in Hawaii and Oceania. Global warming, rising seas, and disappearing islands is being fueled by the US military, the largest producer of greenhouse gases in the world. Today, it is imperative for life itself that we stand against RIMPAC, the participant nation of Israel, who is committing genocide against our brothers and sisters in Palestine. In real time, on a scale never before seen. On May 27th, The United Nations released a report of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territories. In that report, they state that 35,000 Palestinians have been murdered. Of them, 28,682 were women and children, including women and children, sorry, Kalamai. The number that was injured is 77,908. In that report, they also state that 1.1 million people in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, face catastrophic levels of food insecurity. They go on to list numerous crimes against humanity and war crimes that Israel is committing against the indigenous people of Palestine. Israel, and this is a quote from the report from the United Nations, Israel has weaponized the withholding of life-sustaining necessities, cutting off supplies of water, food, electricity. The frequency, prevalence, and severity of sexual and gender-based crimes perpetuated against Palestinians since October 7th across the occupied Palestinian territory indicate that SGBV are part of ISF operating procedures. They condone the public stripping and nudity of both men, women, and children. And this is what they're doing to their own indigenous people. They're coming here to Hawaii. So right now, as a Kanaka Maoli, as a representative of Kalahui, Hawaii, I would like to say to Israel, you are not welcome here. We stand with Palestine. We stand, our brothers and sisters in Palestine are aloha. And we pray for them every single day. We say to the US and to Israel, not in our moana, not on any aina. You are not welcome here. Rimpa needs to be abolished.
And David, if you could stop there and then go on to minute 38:45. And this will be Pete Doctor, who is one of our veterans for peace. And his t-shirt says drop the mic, but mic means military industrial complex. Thank you.
Doctor from Veterans for Peace Hawaii.
Aloha mai kakou. My name is Pete Shimazaki Doctor, one of the co-founders of the Veterans for Peace Hawaii Chapter 113. We are a hui of former military service members, some of us coerced, and of military ohana, who, given our experiences with militarism, are adamantly against it. This cancel RIPAC business is nothing new for Veterans for Peace. In fact, I'm going to jump to my point here that at our 2020 National Convention, Veterans for Peace passed this resolution and resolved that, one, call for the cancellation of the RIPAC war practices in 2020, this is outdated now, and forever, and two, urge the scaling back of military presence in Hawaii and other parts of the Pacific. We said that in the past, and we stand firm on that in the present. For the following reason, the U.S. uses RIPAC as a training ground for genocidal regimes while it illegally occupies our country of Hawaii. Plain and simple. I need to enact a couple other points. That while nations including Colombia, Chile, Peru, Mexico have taken principled positions against the ongoing genocide by the Netanyahu regime, including the closing their embassies, cutting diplomatic ties, and imposing sanctions against Israel on the one hand, and yet train their armed forces with these same militaries dripping with non-combatant blood in so-called games in the lands and the waters of Hawaii, Aole. One more contradiction here to call out. It's hypocritical for Indonesia for being so opposed to the Zionist-imposed genocide, while they too have been committing its own ongoing systematic genocide in West Papua since 1969. Aole. We recognize, as those have been used by the military system, that the military in no way is a defense for the security of the people. It is a direct threat. Our greatest resources are our people and our Aina, and the militaries, plural, are a direct threat to that. And to those who argue that RIMPAC is needed to defend against so-called China, let me remind you, China was a participating country in this RIMPAC exercises. This is a club for military dominance, pure and simple. This has nothing to do with security, except securing political and economic agendas. Nothing can justify what is happening in Palestine. Not even the bogus October 7th narrative can justify what happened, especially when it ignores what was happening on October 6th in the past 7 decades. In closing, VFP Hawaii condemns the exploitation by conscription and poverty draft of the men, women, and teenagers into this divisive system of militarism that exists to protect political and economic national agendas at the expense of the people through blood and taxation. Aole RIMPAC! We need RIM peace now. Mahalo nui. Aloha aina.
Thank you. And David, if you could stop that and then go to 1 hour, 7 minutes. And this will be a hip hop, a voice of our youth, talking about RIMPAC. There it is. Yep. Thank you.
About resistance, about loving our land. I want to get back to that more than anything. But until then, you can follow along with the hook. Okay. Yeah, repeat after me. Drop the military, we got to stop. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. 2 more times now. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. Now let me take you back to 1943, the year that started this catastrophe, when the fuel tanks were created by the military and Roosevelt was the president. Franklin D, there's 20 tanks in total. They're 100 feet wide, but they're so underground they'll never see the sky. They rest right above our largest aquifer, but this Aina is a mother. Get your hands off of her and now drip, drop the military, we got to stop. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. 2 more times now. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. Drip, drop the military, we got to stop. This is only what we do. No, imagine what we don't. Our water crisis is a time bomb that's bound to explode. The U.S. is nothing more than a war machine with capitalism reigns supreme. Matter of fact, HKT said it best: when the U.S. goes to war, Hawaiians lose their land. Just look at what they did to our sacred Makua. Aina is our mother. They did nothing but abuse us. So drip, drop the military, we got to stop. 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 And our water's being poisoned by Uncle Sam. This is imperialism's master plan. So hands up our waters, hands up our daughters. We are not your sheep. You can take us out to slaughter, but keep in mind, the worst is not over. There's oil still leaking in the U.S. Arizona. It's been for 80 years, but it's a lower. We will not rest until this fight is over. So drip, drop the military, we got to stop. 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 When I say land, you say back. Let me hear you. Land back, land back, land back, land back, land back, land back. When I say cancel, you say RIMPAC. Cancel, RIMPAC, cancel, RIMPAC, cancel, RIMPAC, cancel, RIMPAC, cancel, RIMPAC, cancel, RIMPAC. Ayo. Ayo, nakinilay po, Mamo Hawaii. Natives and allies alike, we must rise up and fight against the imperial beaches, which is US militarism and imperialism. We know that it doesn't just steal our lands and our waters, but our women, our mahu, and our kane too. I made a wrong turn trying to get into the parking lot and was greeted by these two kane, two men of color. And I think about the ways in which we should be in allyship with each other, but US militarization makes it so that our kane and our brothers are stolen by this war machine and made to protect something that opposes their own existence. So when we say RIMPAC, when we're saying aole to capitalism, aole to colonization, aole to this imperial beast, we're also saying yes to being better relations with one another, to be in better relations with our aina, to have a better relationship with our puna. It's not just aole, this refusal, but this refusal is done so we can say yes and make life and more space for better things, things that make us grow and make us survive and thrive as one Lahui community and country. Mahalo.
David, if you could stop right there for a minute and just all of this area, the background area that you see, that's at the Pacific Fleet headquarters. And 2 years ago, when RIMPAC started, we had a 10-day Anahuli, which is 10 days of thinking about remembrance. And for we had a presence there 24 hours a day, right in front of the Pacific Command, the Naval Fleet Command. And some of these banners that you see, this one, Cancel RIMPAC, that's on the screen right now. And on the left of it is Kyle Kajihiro, the president of Hawaii Peace and Justice. And the one behind there that says U.S. bases, that is done by Not in Our Name. And it is over 40 years old. It has been used forever and a day. And it tragically, it never loses its relevance because the U.S. bases are everywhere. And now for the final part on RIMPAC, if I could ask you to play the video that we just brought in at the last moment, the one that has Laulani Teal. She's going to be talking about the Cancel RIMPAC Symposium that's going to be in San Diego. And several of our folks from Hawaii are going to be going over to San Diego to be a part of that. So if we can do that one next. Thank you.
Well, let me know if this is it.
Aloha.
Yes, that's
I'd like
it.
to talk to you today about RIMPAC. RIMPAC is the world's largest and most destructive naval exercise in the world. It starts in San Diego, and then all of those 29 countries at the invitation of the United States, including Israel and the IOF, are planning to invade Hawaii, leaving San Diego to come here with 25,000 troops, sex-hungry troops, to bomb our ocean, bomb our land, contaminate our water, and continue an illegal occupation that has no place in this world. We are going to be protesting the entire time, beginning in San Diego, where a group of awesome folks organized a summit and mobilization on June 29th and 30th. You can find it if you go to the Cancel RIMPAC campaign on Instagram or other social media. There is also a border solidarity immersion, which is going to be held on Friday, June 28th from 2 to 8 p.m. in San Diego. Also, there is a Hawaii delegation that is going, and they are accepting donations at Venmo at Princess Misty 20, Princess Misty 20 there. And I highly encourage if anyone can donate to help for more young, awesome activists from a brand new generation fighting RIMPAC to get to San Diego to say ole to war, ole to militarism, ole to the occupation and genocide in Palestine and the occupation of Hawaii, the occupation of Kanaki, the all of the heva that is going on in this world by these colonizers. So if you can, please donate. You can also donate to me at Laulani on Venmo because we are taking a little contingent too, and we're kind of running at the last minute. But the main thing is the young people. If you can see that flyer, this is a wonderful group of young organizers who are coming from Hawaii to go up to San Diego to participate in the delegation to attend the International Cancel RIMPAC Summit and Mobilization on June 29th and 30th. So please give it whatever you can. A'ole to RIMPAC. A'ole to militarization. A'ole to the illegal occupation of Palestine, Kanaki, and Hawaii. And we are all standing together to say, A'ole militarization. It is time for us to be free, and it is time for peace. Mahalo nui loa.
Great, thank you very much. And as you can see from several of the listings, a great number of organizations here in Hawaii have come together on RIMPAC, and that particular one was the Hawaii Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines. So we are really pleased that a lot of youth are finally, I shouldn't say finally, but they are really moving ahead both in Hawaii and the big conference that's going to go on in San Diego is a youth-led conference. So we're very, very pleased with that. Here in Hawaii, not only have we had RIMPAC, or we're going to be having RIMPAC, it starts on the 27th, and indeed we will have sign waving out in front of the Pacific Fleet headquarters from 4 to 6 Hawaii time to make sure that everybody that goes past the front gates of the Pearl Harbor Naval Base knows that inside that naval base is a collection of huge, huge killing power that we hope as peace activists we can prevent ever being used. And another way to try to prevent the use of our military is to check about what the costs of war have been. And in April of this year, April 2024, was an excellent conference that was co-sponsored by the Costs of War Project of Brown University. You know, that Costs of War Project has done such remarkable work on the wars in Afghanistan and the wars in Iraq. And they came out, a delegation came to Hawaii to work with delegates that were selected from all over Asia and the Pacific. And they had a 4-day conference talking about how to do the research to provide the data on how these military exercises are polluting our world, our earth, the dangers to them. It's called Demilitarizing Hawaii and the Pacific for Planetary Survival. The Costs of War Project with Hawaii Peace and Justice and the Cost of War Project at Brown University. We do have a 6-minute video that shows some of the delegates that were there and the tour of parts of Oahu that were shown to all of the delegates as places where we here in Hawaii will be doing the research on the costs of war. So David, if we could ask you to run that video, please.
Working on it. Sharing screen to Is this it?
That's it. Thank you. Yes.
This week, we had an amazing group of international scholars and activists working with think tanks who are doing progressive work and trying to change the narrative about war and militarization. And we invited them here to Hawaii because Hawaii is the hub of the US military power in the Pacific. And it continues to be the place where wars are thought up, wars are practiced, and then they're exported to other countries. So we felt it was a fitting place to talk about both the threats of war in this region, but also the opportunities to make a change, a dramatic change.
So if you can imagine in 1893, US Marines getting off the boat, marching up the street and aiming their Gatling guns at the palace, that becomes the muscle that enables a small group of white businessmen to seize power in the Hawaii Kingdom.
This is an example, I think, of overly focusing on one military action, but it doesn't really capture either side of the military expansion as that had been going on for a much longer period of time.
I mean, I think every museum, it tells us more about the present than about the past. You can see the exhibits, they kind of fetishize militarism. They really show a very American imperialist view of the war in the Pacific. And they try to kind of recruit different racial groups into this great American mission of militarism. But Hawaiian voices are really kept out of that narrative. So when you compare this museum to the Okinawa Peace Memorial Museum, which really focuses on the civilian impact of warfare, this is more of a sales pitch for further American militarism throughout the Pacific.
I was overwhelmed by this praise for militarization. But at the same time, then I realized that maybe that's how majority of people in the US kind of perceive the military.
The military takes land, grabs land everywhere. And they evict the people that are here. They bought out the rancher, that's McCandless. Our community, Waianae, deep ties with the military for generations now, since World War II, right? Because they recruit heavy in our community because we're an underprivileged community.
This is Pu'onua Waianae, village of about 200 people. They've been here for about 20 years. We feel the thing with with the military being here. They have a housing allowance. Our people don't have a housing allowance. So how are we supposed to compete with that?
We kind of look at the work that we do in two political realms, ku'e and kukulu. So ku'e is to resist, to actively resist and oppose. And that's a big thing here in Hawaii, And kukulu is to build and create, to construct. We start to realize that our energy that we put out in our lifetime, we want it to be long lasting. We want it to grow roots and blossom. Who is important? The bulldozers coming to bulldoze a sacred site. We got to get out there and blockade and stop it. But day to day, we're focusing on building, and creating opportunities and venues and structures that uplift and empower our community.
Together, our mission is to grow good food. All of it is organic. We're certified organic, as well as we're food safety certified, and to grow young leaders like Emma and Nala.
One thing I love about Ma'o is because when I first joined, I was someone who's like, oh, I hate getting my hands dirty. I hate the sun.
Look at these calluses.
And I'm like many kids from home, like our age, we don't know about our own cultures, our home, our islands. We don't know about it all. But being here at Ma'o, I was able to learn about not only my culture, but also the Hawaiian culture, which I love. It just made my values and beliefs stronger.
A lot of farming doesn't get talked about, and we rely on fast food and, going to the stores and doing this and that, but we don't know that we can grow our own food in our backyards. And I think that's the big picture of, getting our community involved and taking care of what we call home. they're taking up a lot of the space, which is kind of irritating, but the more irritating we get, the more food we will grow.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to tell them that, you know, this is our land, you're taking our resources and we need it back. In 10 years, I want our land back. You know, I don't want no military. They can go somewhere else. You know, our island is our island.
This is a beautiful place, and the people here are beautiful, and they're doing good work. And what's in my mind is for the last more than 40 years, all I do is study war. And every now and then I find these little injections of hope. And this is a massive, it's like a bolus of hope. Because what people are doing here is they're imagining what it would be like to have a better world, to live in community, to know each other, and to make something better at the same time that they're resisting. So it's the combination of resistance and rebuilding that's so hopeful.
You almost feel the breath of the divine in these spaces now because they've reclaimed it. And so when Hawaiians say that there's connection to the land, or you get your orders from the land, I mean, it's a real deep, interconnected relationship. And so to see these spaces reclaimed and given life back, and you can almost see the possibilities for the future, it's really amazing, largely because it's divinely inspired, I feel, by the ancestors and their support in terms of the activism to make and to create what is and what's possible.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And that was the two coordinators here in Hawaii were Kyle Kajihiro and Christine On. And we want to thank them for putting together that symposium that will provide lots of information for us on the costs of militarism throughout the region. Thank you. Dave, over to you. I think you're muted.
That probably works much better. Thank you, Anne. So embarrassing. Yes, so I'd like to talk a little about Hawaii Peace and Justice. They've been very busy in 2023 and 2024 with youth programs. Two of them were the Youth Liberation Camp and an exchange with the Detroit Area Youth Uniting Michigan. First, we'll see a video that explains the Youth Liberation Camp. If you could play that, David, that would be wonderful.
With the Hawaii Peace and Justice Youth Liberation Camp, we strive to cultivate a safe space where young, aspiring community organizers can learn how to effectively unite together to enact change. Over the course of 3 days, we take our students on a huaka'i to learn movement building for ea through popular education workshops and aina-based education. The curriculum for our workshops are based on our lived realities in Hawaii, including but not limited to reclaiming ea, environmental racism, climate justice, imperialism, and the military-industrial complex. By providing them with these tools and language around what they're subjected to, we can better support them in what they're fighting for, what we're up against, and work with them to build their own grassroots campaigns and long-term strategies.
Being at the Youth Liberation Camp made me feel seen and heard. That's a part of why I believe spaces like this are so important for Native youth, because we live in a society that's so quick to write us off and put us aside. We just learn not to ask questions, that our voices are only one of many, and that there's no way that we individually could make any change. And that might be true, but our singular voices can come together as a law hui through deliberate organization, through education, through asking questions. It's important for us to be knowledgeable and to know our history so that we can maybe have a fighting chance at creating voices that won't be ignored, that can be heard.
Great. Thanks, David.
Great.
I just really comment quickly that Indigenous people, any kind of a movement or peace movement or whatever, it's always connected to the land. And you saw there they were getting involved in the earth itself, growing hollow, because the land and the people are one, and the earth are one. And so there's always culture involved and getting involved in the land. And that's kind of the first principle. And from there, then your language and you build out. And we've seen a tremendous rebirth of Kanaka culture here in Hawaii. When I first got here 40 years ago, the Hawaiian language is almost gone. And but through programs, through where the community were getting together and relearning their culture, relearning their language, we now have a lot of people, I don't know how many now, who speak the language and are very much now connected to the culture. So I just wanted to share that information with you, that it's a little different than, I would say, most American kind of activities, because always that connection to the land and to culture and to language. Take it away, Ann.
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, the other event that Hawaii Peace and Justice has done that is, well, they do a lot, but these two unique ones. And we want to thank the executive director of Hawaii Peace and Justice, Joy Enomoto, for her hard work to bring these youth-oriented events to fruition. And the two folks who work with her, who are going to schools to encourage young people to think about peace instead of war. The second one was the Hawaii Peace and Justice Peer Exchange with the Detroit Area Youth Uniting Michigan. And it was in September, this exchange happened, and it was to bring together the kids from Detroit to show them the militarism of Hawaii and how this is being challenged. And some of the interesting things that were written on the Instagram that the kids put on Detroit was, you know, the similarity that there are, they have violence that comes from the police. Here, the violence comes, it's an international violence of militarism. So it was a very, very good exchange that Hawaii Peace and Justice created. And we hope that they will be able to have many more youth exchanges with kids from all over the continent. We'll go on to a different part of the challenges that we have for peace in Hawaii, and that is trying to get back land that the military has had for a long, long time. And it's called land back. And it's similar to land back that you see at Native Americans on the continent, saying we want our land back that the federal government has taken. But here, in particular, we have an opportunity in Hawaii to get 27,000 acres of land that's been used by the U.S. military. 65 years ago, the state of Hawaii leased 27,000 acres for, get this, $1. $1. So in 2029, these leases are coming up. And the military, of course, wants to release everything, and no doubt for $1. But we're saying give it all back. And there are 4 different locations of parts of this 27,000 acreage. And one of the biggest parcels is over on the Big Island of Hawaii in the Puakaloa Army Training Range, which is the largest military bombing area in the Pacific. And it's the land that we want back that will start reducing the amount of the sacred lands on the Big Island is a very important part of it. And Al Jazeera did a documentary about it that shows so much of the militarism from Hawaii. So that we would like to show you that because it really capsulizes the challenge that we have with the military having gotten so much land here in the Hawaiian Islands. Thank you, David.
The Carl Gustav saw an impact.
Yeah, and I heard it. I'm seeing a side of Hawaii that most people never do. This land is sacred to Native Hawaiians, but the United States Army turned it into training grounds. After World War II, the Army obtained a 65-year lease for 30,000 acres from the state of Hawaii. The price, $1. What is your relationship to the Army right now?
The reality is, it's pretty up.
Today, Indigenous Hawaiians continue to see their sacred lands shot up, bombed, burned, and marched over.
That's exactly what the military is all about. Desecrating, 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 desecrating.
The Army's lease expires in 2029, and a fight is already brewing to get the land back.
When is it gonna stop? When are they gonna realize that the Hawaiians have nothing left?
I came to Hawaii to learn how the U.S. military took Native Hawaiian lands, what they've done to them, and what it'll take to get them back into Indigenous hands.
If you sleep on your side, I bet you hate your pillow, and this is why. They might be as fluffy as...
I'm on the Big Island in Hawaii, and we're about to get rare access inside the Pohakaloa training area. It's the largest training grounds for the U.S. military in the Pacific.
The size of Pohakaloa training area is 210 square miles, which is, for comparison, almost exactly the size of Guam.
Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Cronin is the commander of the Pohakaloa training area, or PTA.
What PTA provides is the training opportunity to reach the highest levels of readiness. And you can do that at PTA because of its size. To train on these types of munitions, you need room. And PTA has that.
Native Hawaiians, also known as Kanaka Maoli, have used this land for at least 8 centuries. But following World War II, the Army started training here. Since then, they've dropped bombs from planes, launched rockets from helicopters, shot targets with mortars and artillery, and left behind unknown amounts of unexploded ordnance, meaning bombs or ammunition that didn't detonate after they were fired. Commander Cronin brought me to the live fire range to show me what the Army does at Pohakaloa.
Tell me what we just heard right now, what we're seeing.
The units on the ground training are practicing their techniques and procedures for when they encounter the enemy. There's another one.
This happens every day?
It happens not necessarily every day, but pretty regularly.
It must be a big task to go in and clean all that up.
So for the impact area where we're firing now, we let that be.
Oh, it's never cleaned?
The impact area is left as it is when we fire in there, and that's for safety reasons.
Does that mean like decades and decades and nobody goes in and picks the stuff up?
Correct.
Wow. To understand how the U.S. military became so entrenched in Hawaii, we have to go back to the 19th century. That's when the U.S. military began occupying island nations in the Pacific to establish itself as an imperial power in Asia. At the time, Hawaii was a sovereign kingdom, but in 1893, the U.S. military helped Anglo sugar plantation barons illegally overthrow Hawaii's Queen Liliuokalani. 5 years later, the U.S. annexed Hawaii, and the military's footprint on the island chain began to grow. During World War II, Hawaii's position in the Pacific made it crucial to U.S. military strategy. And in 1964, the military secured a lease for 30,000 acres of land that they could train on for the next 65 years, all for $1.
So they practically got it free. Oh, I can imagine looking at Pohakaloa through their eyes. It's wasteland. It's large.
This is my island. This is our island. What is the reason for all this bombing?
Ku and Maxine are Native Hawaiians who live 20 miles away from Pohakaloa. In 2014, they sued the state for failing to protect the environment there.
We suspected that there was very little inspections going on at trial. We found out in 50 years, they had inspected the place 2 times, except that one of the reports was completely blank. So it ended up being one inspection in 50 years.
In 50 years.
How often were they supposed to be inspecting?
They should have inspected at least 25 times, but no, only 1 time.
In 2018, a Hawaii federal judge actually sided with them, saying that the state failed to malama aina, using the Native Hawaiian words for land stewardship. He also ordered the Army to clean up its mess of bombs.
In 2029, when their lease is supposed to be terminated, they're supposed to have the place all cleaned up. Well, I think they're going to tell us they're not able to clean up. It's too dangerous to clean up.
Then that's what they're gonna do. If we can't get that land, you're not gonna get the land, Hawaiians. Oh yeah? We'll see.
The military says they need to keep training in Pohakaloa for national security. What's your response?
Well, for me, it's just the opposite. Instead of them being here to protect us, actually, we become part of the target. We're expendable.
The military trained people on 130-something thousand acres. You send them to war, and half of them come home dead and without limbs. So how is it efficient? I lost 2 brothers in Vietnam. And this is why I'm here. So I swore I will fight the military no matter what because of my 2 brothers. So what's important? Our land. Our land is important.
What is the Army's relationship with Native Hawaiians here?
Here at PTA, we have a strong relationship with Native Hawaiians. We have the utmost respect for the community here, the cultural and the history.
There are some Native Hawaiians who say that this is their sacred land and that the Army being here has desecrated and polluted it. How do you respond to that?
I understand their concerns and I listen to them and I communicate with them with humility to develop that increased understanding.
To them, these are sacred lands, and yet here we are seeing them getting blown up.
I would just say, again, we're training here to achieve the highest levels of readiness for our nation's men and women. And what we can do here at Pohakaloa Training Area can't be replicated in the state of Hawaii.
The campaign to take Hawaiian land back from the U.S. military started in the 1970s with the fight over the island of Kaha'olawe. The Navy had turned the island into a bombing range in 1941, following Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, and virtually destroyed the island's ecosystem.
She is not a barren rock that should be used as a target for military bombing practices in the name of national defense.
After decades of pressure, the Navy withdrew in 1994. The fight for Kaha'olawe inspired many Kanaka Maoli to reclaim their traditions and their lands, like here in the Makua Valley on the island of Oahu. Generations of Native Hawaiians lived here up until the 1940s, when the U.S. Army forced the 3,000 residents to leave so it could use the land for target practice. Not only is this valley incredibly beautiful, you can feel that it's also profoundly spiritual. And to think that it was just a matter of years ago that the U.S. Army was actively bombing it, it's hard to imagine. Activists with the group Malama Makua sued the Army and in 2004 successfully got it to stop live fire training here. Now the group is allowed to visit the valley, but only twice a month. So the group has to walk behind this representative from the military who first has to scan the area for potential unexploded ordnance.
We appreciate access into this valley, but we don't appreciate the fact that we have to ask permission to be in this valley.
What is your relationship to the Army right now?
The reality is, it's pretty up. Sorry for the swearing, but it's not like we're all best friends.
The Army promised they would return the land after World War II ended. Instead, they formally secured it in that $1 lease.
I think it's symbolic of how the Army and all the military works. Once they're in, they don't really want to leave.
There were thousands of people living here before the Army kicked them out. Where did they go and how does that impact this space?
They got scattered all over the place or they died. And so there are family members living everywhere. We will be searching for those descendants because they have something to say as well. This was their family land.
This is actually my great-great-grandfather. This is a photo of the property that he once lived on.
Nathan recently learned that his great-great-grandfather used to live in the Makua Valley.
How did it feel to learn that you directly descend from this place, this land?
Honest truth is excitement and scared at the same time.
Why scared?
So now that I know that they lived here, now it's my responsibility being a descendant to take care of the land that they once lived on. And that's how the land works, It's passed down generation to generation, and everybody's job that lives there is to take care of that place.
Is 2 days a month enough?
Nope, not enough. I try to come down here at least 7 days a week. I'm always outside the gate, 2 days out of the month, then I get to come inside the gate, legally.
What are you doing when you're just outside the gate?
I spend a lot of time at the beachside, listening to the valley, listening to nature, because sometimes if you come down here at night, when the breezes come through the valley, you can actually hear voices, hear things. It's kind of like, imagine what life would be like back in those days.
So many generations of people who have lived and died in this valley are still here. This whole valley has life. We think the valley is waving at us all the time. Every time we drive by, it's kind of like, look at me. Don't forget me. Help me.
So come 2029, do you think the Army's still going to be training in Pohakaloa?
Damn right. They're gonna keep doing it unless we get rid of them and bring our land back. You need to leave. Leave quietly, give us back the land, clean it up, go home. Go home already.
Hey guys, it's Dean.
Well, that is a view of what we're facing in terms of the amount of land that we are hoping to get back in the cancellation of the leases in 2029. So that's one of the big challenges that we have here. And I think, Dave, it's next to you.
Thank you, Ann. Now we have a short video with Kanoa. He's a local activist here for peace and justice. He was on the corner and protesting killer drones being based here in Hawaii and talking about the contamination that maybe is done to our local water system. This is a very artistic video. Let's play that. Go ahead.
Again, sacred land, history of land. Just like it's a really sacred space that shouldn't be getting used for that purpose. And, there's just a lot wrong with this issue. A lot wrong with stationing the drones there.
David, do you think you can turn up the volume on that a little, or is it?
If all that land on there was housing, residents of Hawaii, and people were growing food there. Land could be put to better use and it could be restored and respected. And, that's literally the meaning of the name, Mokaku, sacred land.
Let me ask you this, as a young person, how do you feel about this militarization in general? This is one part of militarization, RIMPAC is another. How does it make you feel about your future?
I just think, it's a denial of housing, land that we could be living on. It's a denial of land that we could be using to produce food. Native ecosystem restoration, and they're such bad stewards of the land. Their track record is so horrible. We can't really expect them to clean up the messes they've made. They just have such a bad track record. They're so irresponsible. They cause so much headline destruction and all-time problems. They control a quarter of the land. It's sacred land. It should not be getting used for those purposes. Starting fires that destroy native ecosystems. Every value we want to have, every dream that we have, every vision of the
There's Dave Melinek standing behind him. These are some of the photos of going into Red Hill.
It's not even for a good justification. They say it's national security, but you look at that justification. You look at the history.
These are the 20 giant tanks that held fuel, some of which leaked into the aquifer of Oahu.
World War II, all those wars we fought, they did not need to be fought. They were, driven by corporate interests, driven by strategic whatever. Like, it wasn't for freedom, it wasn't for democracy, it wasn't for nothing. It was just greed. Especially because this military crisis is here because of the nonsense justification that makes it so much worse, right? And it's just like, it's everywhere. It's in Guam, it's in Okinawa, it's in, the Azores where my Portuguese ancestors came from. They have the U.S. military airfield that got all polluted and put stuff in the soil and the groundwater. Imagine that got attacked in like a full-out war. It's like, Aloha, Kaneohe, all the places around the world are gone. All the history, all the ma'olelo, all the archaeological and religious people, the libraries, the schools, all the everything, all the native plant restoration, every little thing they're trying to do to make people's lives better and protect the land. All of that, you gotta think about everything that will be lost because of some dumb decision that comes out of your teeth. And just like, it's really sad to see the water contamination, the fires, all the stuff. Get it out. I don't think we need any of the presidents, I think we could restore food. Get them out of, going on a oil. We put it all that planet much better. I don't think they really have that philosophy. Talk about how they, respect, the people and the culture, but they haven't shown it. And I think that, kind of idea needs to reign supreme, and that's not happening under the military. I don't think it ever is. I think it's, mutually exclusive, right? I don't think those two things can coexist, and so I say get them out. The drones themselves, they, 90% of the people they hit aren't even intended targets. It's the legal precedent of being able to, assassinate people without any judicial process. It's kind of just the executive branch decides we're going to kill you, you're a threat. A lot of the people who have been killed in these, inaccurate drone strikes are children, right? And so, you look at the drone strike that happened recently under the Biden administration, 10 people in a car, originally said they were terrorists, is what the, Biden administration originally said. It turned out it was just a family that was going to get their visas to evacuate to America, pretty soon. And I actually wrote down other names.
Do you think that there's a possibility that those drones could ever be used against people here? I mean,
they decided if we got successful enough and writing all the wrong things, be deemed insurrectionists or going against law and order or going against what's reasonable and good and good orderly society. But they could use them against us.
yeah, sometimes when I hear about these drone strikes, as an activist, I kind of wonder, are those activists just like me,
I mean, I think it was Julian Assange who leaked. It wasn't a drone strike, but one of the military helicopters killed a bunch of two journalists with a pretty big news outlet too, two American journalists.
Oh yeah. I got it at 6-1 or correct. Vantage report route 2-3. That's neighborhood Smith Element. Copy white 6. That's a weapon. Yeah. 226 crazy horse 18. We'll call for change by Charlie Bravo. Let me know when you gather. What shoot? Light them all up. 202 traffic 260. Come on, fire. break. Crazy Horse 1-8, request permission to engage. Picking up the wounded. Yeah, we're trying to get permission to engage. Come on, let us shoot. Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. We're taking him. Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. It's Bushmaster 7, go ahead. Roger, we have a black SUV or bongo truck picking up the bodies. Request permission to engage. Bushmaster 7, Roger. This is Bushmaster 7, Roger, engage. 1-8, engage. Clear. Come on. Clear.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. In like foreign areas where a journalist is there or an activist is there trying to do something, it's much easier to take them out. I mean, there's that one college student who got run over by a bulldozer in Israel trying to stop demolitions. And it's like, yeah, I mean, U.S. citizens and UN citizens can get killed.
Well, we
Okay.
want to, yeah.
There's a lot packed into there. Sorry the audio was so bad, but basically, I mean, it's amazing how much the youth know. In fact, so many of the youth know more than the adults do. They're more well educated what's going on with the military-industrial complex and militarization. The drones, I believe, I can't remember, and you might be more tuned into this. I think that drones kill like 100 innocent civilians per targeted suspected terrorist. So it's really exponentially killing more civilians. And so to have them here in Hawaii was kind of shocking to Kanoa as an indigenous people here, as person here. And then he was showing the Red Hill fuel tanks that the Navy had 100 feet over our aquifer, leaking jet fuel into our drinking water. And we had a big fight over that. It took a couple of years. The Navy kept denying that there was a problem. They covered it up. They lied continually. To this day, they're continuing to lie. And they're continuing to prevent and trying to stop the people from Hawaii cleaning that mess up and them just taking responsibility. So I think Kanoa, he first just came out to sign wave with us and then got involved politically. We've had a lot of youth come out and sign waving. That's a big deal, but we find a lot of youth will get involved through sign waving and then go on to bigger and better things. And Kanoa is doing just that. Our next thing is I want to talk quickly about is the huge groundbreaking lawsuit in Hawaii that's going to make an impact across the nation. The Hawaii and a group of young climate activists have reached a settlement in a groundbreaking lawsuit that accused the Hawaii Department of Transportation of failing to take action to lower the greenhouse gas emissions that are driving global warming. The settlement includes a big pledge that Hawaii will develop a holistic roadmap to fully decarbonize the state's road systems by 2025. A youth council will also be created to give advice. The governor announced the settlement in a news conference Thursday, just a couple of days ago, June 2024. The Hawaii Department of Transportation let's take critical and long needed steps towards our collective climate goals, including number one, finally creating a comprehensive roadmap to fully decarbonize and achieve zero emission transportation system for ground, sea, and interstate transportation by 2045. Basically, the Hawaii Department of Transportation has been doing nothing to get us off of fossil fuels, not putting in more charging stations for electric cars or putting more solar panels. They've just been doing everything they can to keep, supporting carbon, polluting cars, the gas cars. And so the youth of Hawaii sued them saying, you're supposed to be protecting us. We have a right to our clean climate. The second is a climate committee to advise the department, a climate to the transportation in pursuit of its goals. It's going to actually have some youth advising the governor and the Department of Transportation on how to move forward. This is groundbreaking. We're the first state in the nation to win. There's lawsuits all across the country where the youth have been suing the United States government and different states for not doing enough to get us off of fossil fuels. And we have a couple of clips here from the media conference. Andrew Rogers is the main attorney for Our Children's Trust, who took on the suit for the youth. And we have two youth plaintiffs, Panoa and Riley, who will speak. Once again, they are so articulate, and it's every time I watch them, I cry a bit. So if we'd like to show these two clips, that would be great. Where's their audio?
Plaintiffs.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor Green. I'm Andrea Rogers, Deputy Director of U.S. Strategy for Our Children's Trust, and one of the attorneys on the Navajene versus Department of Transportation lawsuit. I'm honored to be here today to announce this unprecedented settlement agreement that is truly one for the ages. Thank you first to the courageous 13 youth plaintiffs who have led us to this day, and whose advocacy and tenacity inspired Hawaii's 3 branches of government to come together to uphold and protect their constitutional rights to a livable climate. Thank you to our plaintiffs' families, to our 10 amazing expert witnesses in this case who dedicated their time and tremendous knowledge, to our local partners, and our deep, deep gratitude to the leadership and innovation of Governor Green, of Director Sniffen, the Hawaii Attorney General's office, without whom this historic agreement would never have been possible. The settlement agreement represents transformative change towards the protection of young people's constitutional rights to a livable climate. Our Children's Trust began this work with youth to secure their rights in Hawaii 13 years ago, first with a petition for rulemaking, and then in partnership with Earth Justice in Navajene versus Hawaii Department of Transportation, the world's first youth-led constitutional climate change case focused on stopping climate pollution from transportation. All these years later, youth plaintiffs and their government have achieved an unprecedented settlement agreement that recognizes that youth do, in fact, have constitutional rights to a livable climate and that their voices matter. Under the agreement, the state of Hawaii will develop a holistic roadmap to fully decarbonize the state's transportation system, taking all actions necessary to achieve zero emissions no later than 2045 for ground transportation, sea and inter-island air transportation. Importantly, the agreement gives youth a voice and a seat at the table with the creation of a volunteer youth council to help Director Sniffen take on this enormous challenge. Hawaii's leadership will offer a model for states and countries around the world to start tackling transportation emissions. This agreement prioritizes innovative transportation solutions that can stop the state's dependence on imported fossil fuels and ensure people's mobility with safe and pollution-free choices. What we see today is democracy in action, with the coming together of all 3 branches of government, led by our youth who activated their courts when their rights were in danger. For the first time, all 3 branches of government are committing to work together to do what they must do according to best available science to protect young people's constitutional rights to a life-sustaining climate and to secure for them a hopeful future in Hawaii. Over a decade ago, Our Children's Trust began representing youth all around the world seeking judicial protection of their climate rights. A global movement has developed, and today in Hawaii, we see real progress as we stand in partnership with our allies celebrating this historic agreement. We are so grateful for these young leaders who have devoted their time, their energy, and their positivity to solving the climate crisis and protecting the islands that they love, and to the adults standing with them who listened and acted. I'm honored to turn over the podium to 2 of our youth plaintiffs, Pahonu and Riley Brooke, to share what this agreement means to them. Thank you.
E a he mai nei ka makani alo pali o kamehame. Mehameha ka leo o ke kupe e o ko ona po. Po o hia o na hale mau na ihoa ai ia e lani po. Aloha mai ka ko. Wau no o Japheth Pahonu Coleman. I am Japheth Pahonu Coleman, and I am humbly honored to celebrate this historic agreement with you all here today. This victory we are celebrating is a testament to all who had the courage to step out and make a stand on both sides of this case. Because we, the youth, in this case, had the courage to speak up, and because government officials like Director Sniffen had the courage to sit down and listen. We are here today with an actionable and enforceable agreement that puts Hawaii's transportation system on the fast track to advance key climate solutions, like electrifying and expanding our full network of clean transportation choices. Courage is what got us here. And we don't speak enough about the role of courage in our culture. Our elders had immense courage to set out across the ocean to come here. Our elders like Papa Mau, who took immense risks to perpetuate our voyaging traditions that endure to this day. Without the courage of George Helm and Uncle Walter Riddy and many others, the sacred island of Kaho'olawe would still be a bombing range. Courage matters. And I have learned that courage is something that all of us can muster when we stand for what we love. Let the deep love we all share for our island home feel our courage to do what is necessary. No ke aloha aina a no nā kanaka Hawaii. This moment is certainly a historical moment, but it is also a reminder of how far we've come and how much farther we must still go. The canoes from throughout the Pacific just gathered at Kualoa for the 2024 Festival of Pacific Arts. And with them came the dreams of our vast moana for a real commitment to countering climate change in every possible way. Over the next 20 years, each and every one of us must make a tremendous effort to reduce emissions and educate our peers and others. This is how we follow through with the commitment being made today. Lasting victory for all of us in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Aloha. My name is Riley Brooke Kamahele. I am 16 years old, and I am one of the youth plaintiffs. At the age of 8, I founded a nonprofit organization to empower children and inspire the next generation to be leaders. For the past 8 years, I have been dedicated to advocating for change through the legislative process and bill writing. My deep connection to the Aina and my desire to protect the future for Keiki fuels my passion for this work, guided by what I feel is a very important Indigenous principle. I believe it's crucial to consider the next 7 generations when making decisions. This commitment has been the driving force for my involvement in this case. All 3 branches of Hawaii's state government have now heard our plea and taken action like never before to protect our constitutional rights to a livable climate. Guided by the best available science and the ike of our kupuna, all of us, Governor Green, Director Sniffen, the legislature, the courts, and all of us climate advocates are working together to decarbonize our transportation system and save our future. Today is a victory for us, the state, and every young person who believes in the power of their voice. Today is a testament to what can be achieved when we stand together with purpose and conviction to hold our governments to their promises for our planet. Let this be a reminder to all the youth, your passion, your advocacy, and your persistence can shape the world we live in. Let's continue to speak up, to take action, and to strive for a future where sustainability and justice prevail. Mahalo nui to everyone who supported us on this journey, our families, our legal team, and our community.
Thanks, David. It's interesting how things go. A couple of years back, we tried to pass a climate emergency, and we were told in the legislature and the governor, it's a waste of time. It'll have no value. It's a resolution, and so it has no teeth. It won't mean anything. And but we went forward, and we got most of the legislators to vote for it, all but one. And the judge who gave the youth standing to proceed with this lawsuit used that climate emergency as a reason that they could have standing and that they could move forward to sue the state to protect their rights because we are in a climate emergency. And so kind of one thing led to the other. And so all of our efforts, even if people say to you that it's a waste of time, it's not going to mean anything, if you think you got some value in it, keep going forward, because you never know when you throw that pebble in a pond, how far the rings are going to go out. So thank those to the youth, and thank everyone. Follow these suits across the nation. There will be more, and the more that they win, the more that we win to cut down on CO2 going to the atmosphere, and the youth getting together to fight for their right to a clean environment. Back to you, Ann.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you and Sherry for your lifelong work on the climate. David and Sherry are two of the great environmental activists that we have here in Hawaii, and we really appreciate all the work you've done. And when you see it comes to a fruition that all of a sudden there's a lawsuit, the kids bring it and they win it. So it's a beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Chicken skin. We get chicken skin here in Hawaii.
It is. Well, we end our Pacific Wave, Peace Wave, with climate justice from the Pacific island of Guam. We want to thank Monica Flores and all the activists that are on Guam who are battling the increasing horrific militarization of their island. And they sent us several videos and said, select one that kind of whatever it will do that will fit into the program. And so we looked, and there's one by Julian Agon. He is a wonderful author, poet, writer, who's an environmental justice lawyer, human rights lawyer. He's earned a Pulitzer Prize for his 2021 essay in the Atlantic called "To Hell with Drowning," like the Pacific Islands drowning. And he's the founder of Blue Ocean Law, which works on the intersection of indigenous rights and environmental justice. And he's on the Global Advisory Council of Progressive International. So we're going to show a part of his presentation, which talks so much about the drowning of the islands, of the lower islands. And we will play as much as we can to finish out this segment. We know we can't show the whole thing, but it will give you a flavor of Guam and Julian and the work that's being done in the Western Pacific. So if we could go ahead and show that, David, and then wherever we need to stop it, we'll about 2 minutes before we're supposed to get off, then we'll come back and thank you for a final time. Thank you.
Honor to be here. Can you all hear me? Yeah. I'm totally undone by the women that have been up here and the art and the beauty and the testimony that we've already heard. I mean, it's truly like a singular thing to be in the presence of those who really command language. It's truly powerful in a way that undoes me every time, and it has again. I'm honored to be here. Thank you all. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for sharing this beautiful evening with us. It is a beautiful evening. I want to thank everyone here, the sponsors as well, for bringing us here. All of the poets that have spoken already. I think poets and poetry, poetry is leading us. I think that is incredibly true. So yes, as Kapua mentioned, I am a Richardson graduate, it's amazing to be back on this campus to like, God, what is it, 15 years? 15 years later. But I've really sort of been busy. I've been, I really have been trying to operationalize the best of the insights that I sort of picked up in this place. You know, I'm trying to sort of be the lawyer in the world that I sort of looked around and emulated some of the amazing people, like my dear friend Kapua. She's battling all the time, like every second of the day, it seems. But yeah, we are trying to do the most important thing one can do with the law, which is to use it, to wield it, to deploy it in service of the most vulnerable communities. So yes, I am also a writer. So I've also been busy trying to sort of intervene at various moments in time that felt particularly pregnant, either with trauma or with possibility. I tried to be really, really deliberate about those interventions because time is so precious and I feel more and more like I have less and less of it. So I try really hard to write when I feel like I cannot not do it, like it is my duty, it's my responsibility to do it. And so I'm going to actually be reading a lot throughout the night. I hope that is okay with you. I'm a writer, so maybe what I've written might be better than what I say here. But I want to start with something that Rebecca Solnit once said recently, I think earlier this year at the Bioneers Conference. She said, the climate crisis requires so many things of us, so many, many things, including so many practical things. But it's also about the stories we tell or the stories we are not telling. Stories are incredibly powerful. They can open doors wide or they can slam them shut. We can tell stories where we're fragile and brittle and where we simply cannot meet the needs of our loved ones, where we cannot rise to the occasion. Or we can tell stories where we're incredibly powerful and we're here to meet the needs of others and to meet the needs of the earth itself. I agree with her. I also was fortunate enough to meet with her. We had a book event last year. This time last year, I'm not sure if you all know, but this exact time last year, No Country for AIDS But Butterflies was released into the world. And one of my conversation partners at the San Francisco bookstore was Rebecca Solnit. And we talked and talked and talked. One of the things we've latched onto is like one of the great failures of the left is that we've really, so many of us anyway, have neglected the role of narrative in the project of bringing about political change. And we've paid dearly for that. One of the reasons we're so stuck at the moment is because we haven't developed a new narrative to get us unstuck. For climate change in particular, part of the problem is that it's not just about the stories we're telling, but how we're telling them. It's all so big. It's all so loud. It's all so much like screaming. We can't hear each other anymore. We can hardly hear ourselves think. My talk tonight, including the pieces that I'm going to read, are a humble attempt to quiet down that noise. And with that, we'll see if I have the talent to work this slideshow. The great writer Arundhati Roy once said, quote, writers imagine that they cull stories from the world. I'm beginning to believe that vanity makes them think so. That it's actually the other way around. Stories cull writers from the world. Stories reveal themselves to us. The public narrative, the private narrative, they colonize us. They commission us. They insist on being told. Truer words were never written. At least this has proven true in my own experience. And the moment I knew it did is when I heard one story about one old man from a small coastal village in Fiji. Faced with the prospect of climate-induced relocation, some leaders have contemplated buying land in other countries in anticipation of having to move some or all of their people. One leader has already sealed a deal. In 2014, the then president of Kiribati and Notitong entered into a purchase agreement with the Anglican Church for more than 5,000 acres in Fiji, paying nearly $9 million for them. Though the deal was seen as visionary by some, to others it marked a kind of death. After all, at what point does an agreement that envisions the relocation of an entire human population, now some 121,000 people, become more eulogy than contract? In Fiji, the government keeps its own kind of death list, an official record of all the villages that may have to be relocated because of sea level rise. Using internal climate vulnerability assessments, the Fijian government has determined which of its coastal villages are most susceptible to coastal erosion, flooding, and saltwater intrusion. As of 2017, 42 villages were on the list. If and when they are forced to move, they won't be the first. In 2014, Vuni Dongaloa formally relocated to higher ground, some 2 kilometers inland. When I spoke with Sailosi Ramatu, that village's headman in July, he told me that the move was hardest on the elders. In the months leading up to the relocation, they held prayer circles. They fasted. They readied themselves for the rupture of having to abandon their ancestral lands. In Fiji, as in many of our islands, the people are tethered to the earth as enshrined in the concept of Vanua, a word that means the land and the people at once. Vuni Dongaloans live and love and die on their lands, most of which they do not even own, at least not as individuals. Rather, theirs is a system of communal land ownership. They tend to their gardens, they bury their dead. They even bury their umbilical cords. So, it was no surprise when, as about 30 families set out for the new site, some of the older women wailed as they walked. Perhaps that's a sound the sea makes when it rises. Old women wailing. Not everyone made the journey. The dead remain interned in a cemetery at the old site. According to Ramatu, one of the biggest struggles his people faced was leaving their buried loved ones behind. Some worry they'll be cursed for abandoning their deceased relatives. Others walk around with holes in their heart, like the old man who visits the cemetery nearly every day to sit by the grave of his dead wife. I'm not sure which flowers he brings her, if any, but I imagine they're beautiful. Perhaps the story of climate change is a story of flowers. Can I take this off? Thank you. So clearly this story commissioned me. It insisted on being told. You know, I've had this climate change essay sort of rolling around in my mind for honest to God 10 years. And I just couldn't. It's too big, right? It's all too big. It's too much. It's climate change. You know, we have such a terrible, logistical time trying to take all of that scale, that enormity, and bring it down, bring it down, bring it down, and bring it down again. You know, but we need to do that. We need to have a conversation about climate change that's astonishingly different. A conversation that has what I feel anyway, what I feel has been missing, and that is intimacy. When I heard this story, I just completely failed. I was like, this is a story that we need to tell. We need a writer and writers to tell these stories because they're granular. We brought them all the way down to earth and we realized, wow, this is what it looks like. This is loss and damage. This is the kind of adverse impact of climate change that we are having a terrible time talking about because we just are up here somewhere. We're up here. And when I heard this story about this one old man in this village, I realized if we can do that, if we can come all the way down, you know, I feel like in some ways we're looking so high for the answer, but maybe we need to look low. You know, we need to forsake the horizon for the hue, for the color, for the texture. We need to be human in this process, and we need our artists to remind us of that. And that is really sort of the intervention. Like once I heard the story, I finally realized, okay, now it's time. I have to sit down. I was about to say my ass down. I also have a foul mouth, but I have to sit and hold this and tell this story because this is a story that has intimacy. This is a story that's capable of trying to like recalibrate the energy of the conversation that we are having, or more rightly not having, about climate change. Where is that bloody thing here? Wait, before I go, this is the village. This is Vunidongoloa. This is it. So the village they moved to, this whole community, roughly 30 families, moved just a little inland and to higher ground. This is the essay that I ended up writing, the one I just talked about. I did it for a number of reasons in terms of the timing, but once it was finished, I worked with The Atlantic. They were a team of great editors, although I've never been, I don't know, exposed to that level. This was my first attempt to publish in a mainstream journal. And I was like, wow, 9 rounds of edits? This is kind of crazy. I was like, this is like law school. This is like Kapua's class, you know, or Linda Krieger's class. I mean, this is really intense, you know? I was like, wow, but I love it. They were so meticulous and ridiculously like merciless, you know, with their editing. But I love that because it's the same sort of enterprise. Lawyers, writers, we're all in this enterprise together. That is to become really, really precise about the language we're using, right? We want to wield our words. We want to brandish them. You know, that is what good writing at least attempts to do. And with this essay in particular, one of the reasons that I found the timing so important. So the team of editors worked really closely with me to get it published on November 1st. That's important because it coincided with the opening week of COP. Yet another year, yet another COP. You know, and we needed, you know, a shot in the arm. You know, we needed some freaking adrenaline because before that, I mean, so many of the Pacific Island delegations, you know, they're just so battered by this sort of process, you know, into which they pour so much of their political energy. And I would argue oftentimes get too little out of that process, you know? And what I wanted to do, especially with the title, was try to breathe new life into the slogan, you know, the mantra, the war cry of the Pacific Climate Warriors. Do you all know what that is, that mantra? You know, we're not drowning, we're fighting. So I tried to like, you just reinterpret it when I titled this essay. And honestly, the best part about it was not the nomination for the Pulitzer, it was really all of the clandestine messages that I received from climate activists across Oceania saying, yes, thank you, yes, this is exactly what we needed. We needed a shot in the arm. But another reason why this essay is so important and why I'm reading from it twice, 2 different sections, is because it helped me operationalize a belief that I have, a conviction, if you will, that the imagination that got us into this planetary mess will not and cannot be the one to get us out of it. And thus, we have an obligation to wrap our arms around those with a different imagination. Of course, I'm talking about Indigenous peoples, in particular, the Indigenous communities throughout Oceania that I work so closely with, that I have sort of walked arm in arm with for the last 15 years.
I think we have to cut it off, unfortunately. Wonderful.
Indeed, yes. Well, if we could just mention, I mean, that was an interesting way to end our 2 hours of the Pacific and Oceania. And I think it gives us the courage to do lots of writing about all the issues that we are facing to try to mobilize change. And we thank you, David, and David Mullinex, our partner here, World Beyond War and the International Peace Bureau, for doing yet one more year of the Peace Wave. Thank you.
Thank you to Ann Wright and Dave Mullenix and the wonderful people of Hawaii and the Pacific Ocean and the world. And we are halfway through the 24-hour Peace Wave, 12 hours to go. As always, as we switch to a new part 7, I am going to stop the recording. And I am going to stop the restreaming. That means if you are watching this on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, you're going to have to find the new one that will appear momentarily. We can't do 24-hour videos on these channels. So we're stopping again at 2 hours.